he drew 0 Cthulhu pieces in.
Yeah. All I'll say is, in my experience, Rogue has about 100 ways to proc a field contact, therefore it doesn't matter if you draw a 5 cost, so we'll see how it pans out, but let's dive right into it. Subtle Thijs on that, a secret Libram Paladin on top, and Viper on the bottom on this Rogue with a sprinkling. An old god. Thijs, I'm guessing, is what Sottle's making those questionable sounds at. Is this opening hand double attendant, double first day of school, and of course the coin, and without Viper having a turn 1 play or anything really to go for outside the Octobot Sottle, Thijs should just go max board presence as quickly as possible.
Yeah, I agree. If anything, like, I was reacting exponentially. Like, I reacted to Thijs' hand, then Viper mulliganed and kind of filled in his spare slot with the Ticketmaster, and like, well, that's kind of one of the best starts he can have with this deck as well, right? Like, Octobot, Mankrik into kind of his miracle card with the Ticketmaster, but then Thijs mulliganed into second first day of school, and like, yeah, it was just exponential noises coming out of my mouth at that point.
Yeah, I thought just for a second there, like, Thijs was going to hold the coin. I was like, he's a madman. Like, just play tons of minions, and especially as well, the 3 health on at least, you know, half of his minion choices there is so good because they can't even reliably get, like, pinged down that easily.
I see, after he ripped the first day of school, I would have considered holding coin here, I think, because holding coin gave him the ability to go Hand of Adal Abusive Sergeant on turn 2, which kills an Octobot without proccing Frenzy, right? Which is actually like a really, really huge deal in the matchup.
He could just go extra 1-drop Abusive Sergeant all face and just decides to play aggro instead. He's going to face that challenge, though.
Okay, I was about to say, this is where Thijs, the best gamer in the world, draws a 0-mana Libram to be able to solve that problem anyway, but it doesn't end up happening.
Do you actually like the Hand of Adal here, outside of, say, Abusive plus, like, Wolpertinger?
Oh, I do, yeah. I think giving your opponent too much control over their 2-mana Emperor Thaurissan is an issue that needs to be very quickly avoided. I think just dealing with that, staying massively ahead, I think is...
Oh, no, well, yeah, I guess like what I mean is he could have still killed it, but he would have had a 1-1 and 2 more 1-1s on the board, right?
What do you want to do? Oh, you want to go Abusive, full trade?
And then like Wolpertinger.
Yeah,
and just go super wide, that's all.
No, that's fair. Yeah, now you lay it out, I think that's actually a reasonable play, yeah.
It's like, although card draw is never bad, Thijs has a ton of stuff to do in the next few turns, so he's not starved for anything right now.
I do think the fact that he has played double Outdoor Attendant, though, does raise the value of card draw, right? Because as soon as he hits a Libram of Wisdom, like, he's just off to the races. His hand is just absolutely insane at that point.
Let me think.
Now, though, you see the benefit of that Octo going off, right? Like, the Mankrik and One Maker this turn seems so strong.
Yep. Seems like a very good Hand of Adal Abusive Sergeant turn, though.
Is that Libram? No? Okay.
Nope.
I was expecting it, I'm not going to lie.
Get in there and fight, maggot.
Clean double trade again, maintaining board control once more.
The nuts.
That is looking like it's going to be pretty good next turn, I will say.
Do you think this... How heavily do you think this will influence Viper's choice this turn? Like, do you think you can hold off on the Kazakus and go, like, Ticketmaster here instead?
Yeah, I like this play. Because he has a 5-mana play locked up already, potentially, right? Is what you're saying? He doesn't necessarily need to go to that Kazakus now?
And it's almost a certainty that he will at least favor the Heart of Cthulhu. Noises!
Yeah!
May the light grant you peace.
Honestly, Thijs' card draw this game has been pretty crazy, right? He's winning on board and his hand is close to full.
Yeah. Yeah, I heard Derek, just as they were going off air, just talk about the weapon rogue, the poison rogue's ability to do that same thing. You know, the way he put it was that they're doing so many other things outside of drawing cards, but they still just have 7 cards in their hand. And yeah, it absolutely does feel like that as well with Paladins sometimes, because of all the tutors they have pulling together certain things between sword and between Knight of Anointment, just pulling out particular things, like Knight of Anointment pulls Hand of Adal, and then Hand of Adal picks up your sword, and so on and so on. You just keep ripping through all these cards. It's such a great little draw engine.
Yeah, and I've also almost had to like reset my brain a little bit, because all I've been seeing the last day or so are like aggro Paladins, and it's like Thijs is not all in on this board by any stretch of the imagination, right? He has all of the late game available to him also, so even that he's running the Libram of Judgment, right, for the big weapon swing damage too later on if he gets hold of it. Viper now, of course, scared of Oh My Yogg, because if he plays Heart of Cthulhu, it's like, it's less about not proccing Cthulhu and more about, well, if you play this and it doesn't clear the board, have I just skipped my turn?
And it's interesting, right, because Thijs had the option to buff his 1/3 into a 2/4 and didn't do that. He buffed a 1/1 into a 2/2. And one of those plays would play around Heart of Cthulhu. So it almost feels like Thijs has deliberately not played around Heart of Cthulhu with the play that he's made.
So it's like, yeah, play it, I dare you, it's Yogg.
Yeah, that's kind of interesting. All right, Thijs gives the nod. Actually, wait, no, you should have information, right? Because if you were hand tracking, that Avenge was the holy spell that was drawn from Knight of Anointment. So actually, if you were tracking...
okay, sure.
You should have known what secret that was, I think.
Pretty easy clear of this with Wicked Stab. But funnily enough, this Talon is actually going to draw Thijs like a really good minion for next turn. Because it'll draw him the Truth Seeker, I believe, yes.
I'm looking for a few good mercenaries.
You favouring 5 here?
Looks like a 5, yeah. Five is what he's gone for.
Mm-hmm. Evolving Missiles could have been very, very clutch there, not only to deal with the Talon draw, but also the Libram that's on it as well, and just reduce some of the value that Thijs could have.
Does have Secret Passage in his hand as a draw engine. Like, obviously Springwater is not as powerful in other decks as it is in Spellmage. He might feel like he just needs more draws in hand. Yeah, he chooses to go for it here, using Wicked Stab to clear up. Golem is Divine Shield, deal 3, by the way, in Viper's hand.
It's going to start getting a little bit scary because although Viper's obviously not playing a super aggro deck or anything, he is going to have to start considering Libram of Hopes and how he actually even kills them, right? Like at the moment, he's outside of some big plunderers, I think he's really going to struggle to kill those A8s.
I think he's really going to struggle to not die to 15 damage on a stick right now with the Libram coming into hand from Thijs.
And it's what I was mentioning earlier, right? It looked like Thijs was kind of going all in, but it wasn't because he just had that many resources he could play and he still has access to tons of endgame.
Armor! Lightly used armor!
That's also now the armor vendor. I was going to raise that question of whether that's actually counterintuitive for Thijs in this position with the hand that he does have, because Lady Liadrin will currently bring him back a bunch of 0-mana Librams, and I think he gets 2 Hand of Adal back from it as well, plus the Libram of Judgment. That's a ton of damage that can be stacked up over the next few turns.
It is, but I think Avenge being live pushes it for me anyway, right? Because, you know, it means that Viper has to deal with one big minion and one medium-sized minion, probably. So, which is a lot better than just being able to just ignore a 1/3 or just not play around it at all.
Viper has a higher success rate with Springwater in Rogue than I did with Wama's actual Age deck.
He can also clear this without proccing the Avenge now with this Golem, which is very, very nice indeed.
Yeah, I was looking at this play. He only actually needed to hit once to make this happen, right? If he'd have drawn one spell, one minion, he just would not have been able to fit in the dagger at the end of the turn. Right. So I think it was a pretty calculated risk to go for that play on Viper's part.
Yeah, only really a more positive outcome than what he could have already done. Now this hand's looking a little bit tricky, mainly because Thijs will want to start swinging this weapon, but he doesn't really have minions to build on, so a part of me is even wondering whether he just slams Liadrin and just stacks it all with Librams this turn and says, I've not got much to do, deal with this Viper.
Yep.
Also,
He
does
is
have the
currently
benefit-
on 10 cards, which means if his Liadrin dies here, he will go back to 10 cards and then overdraw on the following turn, which is a minor issue, but not one to be too concerned about.
He did get the Libram of Judgment active as well, which is nice, or corrupted, should I say.
Yes.
Because sometimes that, actually, we were talking about Cariel earlier, sometimes Cariel can make it a lot harder to proc, right? Because Cariel's actually reducing, like, your hopes, for example, as well, if they're in hand.
True. Yeah.
And of awkward here for Viper as well, because one of the cards he will have wanted to, say, Secret Passage into is a Prize Plunderer. So he could just...
True.
He could just, like, play it this turn and hope for Shadow Step or something. Do you think
That's
there's any
just-
merit to that?
Yeah, that's what I was leaning towards. Yeah, he does pick up the Shadow Step. Is that he could have gotten...
Jeez.
That is a... He
could have done it all.
Extremely ugly Secret Passage. But yeah, so he could have gone for make his hero immune, right, with the poison, and then played out a Swashbuckler, Prize Plunderer, and then gone Secret Passage. It's still asking a lot to get enough cards from the Secret Passage then to allow you to Shadow Step, Prize Plunderer, and kill this. But at least then also if you have to swing with your dagger, you're immune, so you're not taking the damage, right, if you need to finish it off that way.
Yeah, I think
So,
outside of the Cthulhu card that will eat a minion, I'm not even sure what better options the digging with passage could have even got. You know what I mean? In like a perfect world.
right.
Well, Viper now just facing down this 10 attack minimum, although he is aware that there'll be 2 Hand of Adols in there as well. That's full knowledge. We can see the Libram, and I'm liking Thijs' options here of just aiming everything at one very precise point on the board, Sottle. How are you feeling about this?
It's just a straight up 19 downtown. Yeah, it looks like it. Let's do it.
You can also still just play Knight of Anointment, so to help with Avenge, and also just maybe draw something else to plan out the rest of the turn.
Yeah, agreed.
Though shouldn't he play it first?
Is there something else for 1 mana he would rather play if he gets it beforehand? I don't think Penflinger is it.
Yogg, I guess?
Oh, my Yogg, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's fair. Yeah.
I'm just thinking because the Avenge, right? Like, just make it annoying for Viper to deal with this board. Like, if he kills a 1-1, great, the Liadrin gets even more stats.
Oh, his Libram of Justice costs 1. Okay, he's seen that and turned it down otherwise. But I do think that was a very realistic consideration, right?
Yeah, so I was maybe like, the second draw was also a Libram of Justice that costs 1.
A little confused by the last 2 actions of that play. I think that all made sense if, like, Libram of Justice was the 1 mana card that he was fishing for, right? And then he can just kind of go... Well, actually, that wouldn't still be that good, right? Because you'd have to Libram of Justice swing the weapon into a thing, and then you wouldn't be able to swing the big weapon face anyway. I think this actually turned out fine.
He wouldn't have Penflingered, right, either. So it's not like he could have gone, like, Libram Penflinger weapon or something.
Yeah.
Thijs looked pained at seeing the Swashbuckler, and I'm like, Thijs, you have like 1 million damage. What could you possibly be afraid of at this point?
I mean, if anything kills the 14-11 here straight up, if he got, like, I don't know, Coerce or something, right? Like, so it's like suddenly he's very realistically facing down 2-turn lethal on the other side if he doesn't pick up, like, Libram of Hope. I guess at that point he'd just divert to, like, Libram of Justice, Penflinger, and just tidy everything up, but then he'd lose his weapon. I don't know. It's kind of sketchy.
Was that a bad example, Sol? Coerce? Because would it give it to him? Because it's kind of a row card.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, I forget it even is a row.
Yeah, like Shadow of Death, I guess, is more reasonable. Because it gives you a card from another class. So does it work with Warrior? Because it's technically a Warrior card.
No,
as well?
it doesn't.
I don't know.
You can't get dual class card.
Okay. Yeah, there you go then.
Yeah.
So your
I thought
examples,
I'm
Alison.
wrong, but I still have to confirm to you that I'm wrong for us to move on. That's just our dynamic in a nutshell, Raven.
Yeah. Good brain freeze here, though, on the Liadrian. Able to clear this off. I even wondered whether he should have. I guess. There's not enough damage presented here for Viper to, like, try and two-turn this, right?
Nope.
I was just thinking, like, lock... Ooh, okay. Like, locking the Librams, like, out of the game, to an extent, always is intriguing to me.
Whoa, really?
Maximum value soul. You're not overwriting that weapon yet.
Well, he could just penflinger it down and hit face, right? Yeah, that's kind of what I was leaning towards this turn. He has 6 mana to spend on pens, and he has the 0 mana Librams in order to refresh it that many times.
And he also has like a million sources of 1 damage no matter what happens next turn, because he has 2 Librams and the weapon that you can just equip and go face, unless there's a taunt, of course.
Right.
Which then you could say he's got the penflinger for anyway, so yeah. I do agree, actually. Looking back, I actually think that was just better, right?
I'm not sure if like Thijs is considering a particular secret, but there's also like pack tactics involved, which makes his play worse, right? By him attacking a minion. It's interesting.
No secret's effective in a negative way with the other plan, right? Because if he swings face and it's explosive, who cares? If it's freezing, who cares? You know, so... Okay, lesser heal.
Oh, Ice
Ice
Barrier
Barrier
as well. Is Netherwind Portal just better though? Like, do you need to win on board from this point?
Well,
Same.
currently he has no way of stopping this 7/7 hitting him, right?
That's
Okay, without trading, but again, does he want to throw all his minions away to this 1 minion? Never mind. Okay,
Never doubt the rogue, Raven.
now I think he should brain freeze and not kill it.
Is he racing?
But you know there's a million juggles, right? So... Wait, does he not want to play that?
That's so
On the 5/4?
Maybe he's putting it on the 1/3, similar amount of health, but he also protects his biggest minion that he wants to race with.
That's true. Do you think he should kill this 7/7?
I need like full information as to like what his burn spells or whatever else are, because if he can race and 2-turn and just freeze it and not yeah, but like, you know, if he'd like picked up Fireball from that one thief and then he had like a clean 2-turn lethal setup, then I would be much more inclined to leave it alive and just frozen on the board.
He's already used 1 wicked stab, right? We know that for sure because he used it on tailing.
If he's not going to end the game next turn, he like those cards that he would use to kill the minion, like the Prize Plunderer, are going back into his deck, right? So he wouldn't necessarily be able to kill it next turn either if he didn't kill it this turn. So I think it is a pretty difficult choice to be made, if I'm honest.
It's really tough because you just know half your board's dead now, right? Like that's what worries me. Is Viper just knows this is going to happen.
Yeah.
He does burn a card with that play, which we saw. I believe it was Avenge, was it? I think that got burnt.
Reporting for duty.
He has no Avengers left in his deck, so I'm assuming that's right, yeah.
Yep. Viper going to get the bad news as well that Limber of Justice is there, which means he is going to lose his whole board. And I think
it's the good news that I don't think there's any feasible way he takes any face damage this turn, and he does have a Rigged Fair Game equipped currently, which is fantastic news for Viper for the way that he has played the last turn.
Yeah. And there's nothing Thijs can do about it.
Look at remaining cards of Thijs at this point. You can see there's not a huge amount of value left in there. There is that one Libram of Hope. He did burn the other one off the top on the first turn. His hand was full. But he is perhaps just running out of gas a little bit to be able to end this game if Viper can defend himself for 1 or 2 more turns. But that is not a hand that defends himself particularly well.
Have you not played Jandis before?
Good point. Double Earth Ellie. What am I thinking?
At this point, I think with what Viper has left, Jandis, Shadow Step, Ice Barrier could be good, or just go nuts and double Jandis.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? I think if you get like a big taunt off the first Jandis, you might just Shadow Step the Jandis and believe, right? And just replay it.
Well, he knows that there's Penflinger plus one card that has been held onto for quite a long time now, actually.
Yes.
And outside of Libram of Hope, I think it's fair to say that there's nothing like game-breaking left in Thijs' deck. Saw one was already burnt as well.
That is, I believe, the second worst possible Jandis minion.
Can he? Oh, no, okay. I was actually looking at whether there's ever like a weird Shadow Step the 3-2 play.
Okay, nice. I like where your head's at. Probably nonsense, but I like that you're considering it.
I guess, like, depending on if you're a glass half full kind of person or not, the good thing about this turn for Viper is this 7/7 can't die. Therefore, there's no crazy Penflinger turn. Or, you know, nothing to the extent that we've seen in the last couple of turns.
Yes. Within reasonable boundaries, true. It could theoretically die, right? If you want to trade into the 5/5 and then Penflinger, bounce, Penflinger, get all the Librams back and go from there. But
or just like Libram first and just run it in. I don't know. Thijs doesn't have to worry about his total right now. He has to worry about ending the game, right?
yeah. It is something he's been a little bit hesitant to try and do this game, it has to be said. There were options for him to get significantly more aggressive than he has done.
And just looking at what's available here for Viper as well, because he also has to finish the game. Of course, there are Cthulhu cards in there too that you won't get seen, and the 3/3s from the tickets. So I would say actually Viper's got more than enough to end this game. It's just he's got a much smaller window to do so.
Absolutely, yeah.
It's actually really
And I mean,
close.
we are seeing Penflinger nerf in sharp focus, right? Because this would not be a game of Hearthstone.
Oh, we've been game 2. Yeah.
Yeah, with Penflinger being able to deal damage, like, not only would this game have been over much quicker, but Thijs also would have certainly played much more aggressively if he had Penflinger in hand with all of those Librams.
I wonder.
It's quiet. Too quiet.
What makes something real?
Oh!
Hey.
Now that's Jandis Gaming right there. Double rush, frenzy, draw a card.
Gets to have the 5/5 going.
Oh.
There's Olga. Mancrick and Rage now pushed in extra 3. Wicked Stab's there for 6.
It's just over. This has to be, what, Libram of Hope off the top now? Does he even get a card off the top? I think he does, right? I think he has exactly one space in his hand.
And I think you meant this is just Olga.
I definitely did not mean that, Raven.
Get on nice and early in the day. Start as you mean to go on. I think that was Carriol, which is not really going to achieve too much at this point with the hand that Thijs has.
No. Thijs just going to have to go ham with the Penflinger again with his second Libram. There are no secrets left in his deck. I believe that Oh My Yogg draw on the other term was the last remaining secret outside of the Oh My Yogg he currently has in play.
Look at this though, like, does Viper only, like, I guess it's not that simple because of the Libram minion, but with Wicked Stab and Eye of Cthulhu, like, Viper's getting awfully close to just finishing Thijs here.
Yep, that was a huge turn. Honestly, I think we've seen Viper look a little bit frustrated over the last few turns in that he's drawn so many cards and not found any bear tickets. I think that's what his facial expressions have been about for the last few turns. And you can see suddenly when the tickets and the Mancrick and Ranged have all just started to hit the board, just how much tempo he's generating so quickly against Thijs. This is the sad thing about Penflinger now. It's just like, well, I have 1 mana left and I can't spend it. This isn't a thing that used to happen.
Just Penflinger your own minion, it's fine. Get max value.
Yeah.
Also, one thing to note as well, Thijs still has a pretty scary Samuro clear at some point in the near future with all these Librams, so he has a way to fight back off a wider board, but he needs to draw it very soon.
Arguably still correct, right? To just going back to the previous turn, to shoot your own minion, make it a 6/5, and then make it a 7/6 with the other Libram of Wisdom. Also, obviously, like, I'm not saying Thijs didn't see that, but it's also arguably better to still have one Libram in your hand, just to be able to, you know, activate things if your minion doesn't die. But interesting mechanic that it sometimes is better just to remove 1 health to add +1/+1 to your existing minion.
And what do you like here? We see Viper with the Wicked Stab initially aimed at face. I was looking at just Wicked Stab the minion and go Eye of Cthulhu. He could have just started with Swindle as well.
Oh, what a card oh my Yogg is.
Okay, well, he's replaced them. There's more where that came from. He just locked it in last minute. So 8 damage here for Thijs. Oh. Thijs just needs that Libram of Hope and he's kind of back in the game.
Does this have to trade? Don't have enough with the Penflinger, right? You have to take 3 off the board. No, technically you could just take 2 off the board, right? Because there's 0 damage left in Viper's deck, I believe, at this point. No, there's 1 stab still remaining. I think his deck is Brain Freeze.
No, it's not.
It's Brain Freeze Cthulhu spell. Yeah,
Yes,
yeah, it's Brain Freeze
yes.
Cthulhu spell. Yeah, so there's
But
actually
it's the-
0 damage left.
It's the eat a minion one,
Destroy
right?
a minion,
Yeah.
yeah. He could have just left 6 in play and not worried about it, which looks like maybe what he's doing here anyway. Yeah, okay. And trade off 1 more. There was the option to just leave 2 bears up, because I think the dagger is still only at 1 attack. If it's at 2, that'll explain a lot.
I guess if he knows that there's that 1 Cthulhu card left and it just eats the Divine Shield minion anyway,
True.
is it worth just trading? Like, why just take less damage?
True.
It's quiet. Too quiet.
Oh boy, that is the perfect order to draw those 2 cards in! Oh, the Brain Freeze gets to kill the 1 remaining Oh My Yogg as well, which means obviously he's usually not going to draw a card here, but it does mean that the Cthulhu spell is now at least available to be activated. There's no odds.
Does it matter?
There's no odds.
doesn't
It's on the
matter.
board. Oh.
Wow, wow, wow. Thijs just about took that one, and it looked maybe closer than it had to be, just based off some early decisions. But of course, Thijs also had the unfortunate issue of he burnt 1 Libram of Hope, and his second one was just still not drawn that game. Whereas if Thijs could play Libram of Hope there, I think he feels, you know, infinitely more safe, right, at that point. But yeah, that was a very, very close game with Viper literally, you know, being a card draw away from a Cthulhu going on there. So what a crazy game 1 of today, Sol. I'm already excited for game number 2.
Yeah, it was pretty insane. I know Thijs has gone back and looked at his series from last week against Viper, so interesting if he looks at this one as well, whether he agrees with the lines he took, because I certainly think there were some opportunities for him to get slightly more aggressive. And I think as we watched the game develop, it did become quite clear that, you know, Viper was going to outvalue him and out-tempo him at some point over the course of the game with all the you know, all the prize tickets, with the Man-Crick, with everything else that was coming out of his deck so quickly, and more importantly, just how quickly he draws his deck, right? Which is, you know, an underrated aspect of who gets ahead on tempo.
Yeah, I mean, it was that turn, right? I think we saw it just a few moments ago where there was the 6/6 taunt on board for Viper, and he could have Penfling it down and put 5 to face, put his opponent to 1, and he had other weapons in hand, and still 1 more swing of his weapon. So that was an option. Whether there was other fears of, you know, generated ice barrier, and then he leaves the whole board up, and then he loses in you know, a response sort of aggressive couple of turns. So those issues are valid, of course, and I'm not saying that Thijs was strictly wrong in his decision, but when you just see the game play out, there were decisions that could have changed the outcome. So very, very interesting, very close game for that game number 1, but it looks like Thijs is going to be moving over to this control lock now. And unlike some of the other players across GM, he is not bringing this Voidbringer list. He's bringing what I would deem a much more standard control lock.
Yeah, it looks that way. 2 Venomous Scorpids in their usual top end with Alexstrasza, Jiraxxus, and Yasharaj. Single Twisting Nether, pretty standard as well. And then just all of that early game removal that we love to play against when we come up against Control Warlock. Double Soul Shear, double Drain Soul, double School Spirits, double Hysteria, and double Cascading Disaster as well, which I think is one of the most underrated cards in the game, which I say with full confidence, even being aware that most people know that it's a really good card. I still think it's extremely underrated. That card is bananas, and I think particularly when you're on coin and you have the ability to go coin Ogremancer into Cascading, for example, as your curve. I think that's potentially so powerful, because there is such a temptation when you're especially up against an aggro deck when they play an Ogremancer, where you just go, okay, play minions, go face. That's my response to the Ogremancer, right? And then suddenly you've just walked straight into Cascading Disaster that they corrupted on the previous turn. So I think that is a very powerful 1-2 punch, but what is also a very powerful 1-2 punch is equipping a weapon and then playing a green rag and smashing both of those things into your face.
Yes, I think the important thing about this matchup is Demon Hunter cares a lot less about its minions sticking on board than most other minion, heavy decks, I guess, right now. A lot of the damage does actually come from, say, Fury, when they're slightly higher ranks than rank 1, of course. This Chaos Strike Relentless Pursuit is huge, but as you quite rightly pointed out, the Illidari Inquisitor, like the star of the show, just being able to do insane burst damage, and most importantly, able to trade through minions such as a Strongman first, and then go face in the same turn and open up the weapon damage. So that is the true strength. The fact that the minion has natural rush and then attacks the target you attack makes it able to say, you know what? Well, one taunt minion is not good enough, right? Like, you are going to take the damage. And all these other minions, the Cult Neophyte here, Felfire, Deadeye, Pantheras, they all serve a purpose, and their main purpose isn't even that focused on, oh, I need these minions to stick to do damage to a Warlock. It's not like playing Face Hunter, right, where you want the minions to get that face damage in. Like, Demon Hunter can play a little bit slower and just say, I'll play this cheap minion. Yeah, sure, use a Soul Share on it. Fine, I'm on my next card now, pushing even more damage with weapons. So, very excited to see this, but I would put a lot of favour over to Viper on this matchup.
Yeah, we will wait and see for sure, but this is a deck that is a relatively new development, and you've got to say that Viper submitting this deck even kind of just shows that sometimes he is a little bit ahead of the curve. I think sometimes he's so far ahead of the curve that he wraps all the way back round again and he's at the back end of the curve and he's just playing absolute unplayable garbage. But the fact he is willing to experiment, I think a lot of people, I think if I have a flaw as a Hearthstone player, it's that I tend to view new things with too much skepticism. Like, if a new weird deck appears, I'm like, this can't be good, it's garbage, right? Until it's proven to me that it is.
Whereas, as usual, I'm your, polar opposite. I view them with too much. It's like,
yes.
And I'm like, yeah, let's play this new thing. It's amazing because I won one game with it.
But yeah, Viper certainly is more in your school of thought, I would say, and certainly is not even just, out there paying attention to what new lists appear. He's in the lab building them himself as well. So no surprise that, he does look like he has some of the more innovative and perhaps more up-to-date lists of some of the European players, but still some interesting Viper decisions in there, such as Cthulhu in Rogue, for example.
Yeah, and it's the type of... I get style is the word I'm going to choose to use, but use whatever. Sometimes it makes you look like a god, and you win a tournament because of it. And then sometimes it makes you look like you've never played Hearthstone before, right? And you've made the most terrible decision. But either way, it's gameplay I enjoy watching, and right now that's what's most important. Moving on quickly
Raven,
to the battlefield.
Simply the best way we can put it is sometimes it gets you to the final of a world championship and sometimes it makes you lose that final of the world championship.
Correct. There you go. Perfect. Viper getting off to a pretty good start here. Does have the Eldrazi Warblades for next turn. And again, I don't think in this matchup Viper's too fussed about getting max lifesteal value from this weapon. More focused on just push load of damage and set up for... well, these, which is a little bit unfortunate that now he's drawn both. He probably needed one good turn on that turn 4 to really be happy about this.
Right. But again, like, you know, my perception of this deck is, you know, it is 2 8/8s and a dream. That is how the deck is built up. Like, these cards are so absurd, and the rest of the support around it is just kind of there to get you to that point where they can be powerful. So the fact he has already both Illidari Inquisitors drawn, like, maybe his position is just okay this game. Obviously, his hand is not getting better very quickly right now, but I think he's still in a decent position just having so much damage represented in the late game.
Yeah, the only, I guess, question is that you'd much rather at least have one in there, because having Skull hit an Inquisitor is very powerful. And I lost to someone who had Skull hit both Inquisitors, and they had the Felfire Dreadeye on the board, and I just died. So, yeah, you could do some pretty crazy things, but yeah, having them both is a good setup, but Viper's just got nothing, like I mentioned, to like bridge the gap, right? To get there in a good position, I would say.
Mm-hmm. Imagine this is push face, have a big talk to yourself about whether you can also push this Battle Fiend face, except that you probably can't, and trade it into the 3/4. Yeah.
Yeah, just view it that the soul fragments will get drawn in the next couple of turns anyway, so the damage would be wasted.
Sure. That's a very, very healthy perspective you have on life there, Raven.
Sharp, proud, smell.
Okay.
One thing that is important.
Powerful looking Hearthstone turn that Viper has had access to this game, I would say, but it might just even be better to re-equip the Warglaives here for the following turn.
Yeah, I was just going to say, the one thing that's important though is Warglaives in this kind of matchup does not have to come down on 5. You can wait, because you can just use those multi-swings to actually just set up the Inquisitor into Inquisitor. And although, of course, on the turn 9, which is the normal second one, you can hero power, well, being able to push 3 instead of hero power in is still just more damage, right? So it's it'll be interesting to see. Also, there's like, if you held it till turn 9, there's the swing hero power and then have 1 extra swing again if you did it into a minion.
Right.
But there's also not much else for Viper to do.
He also has to think in the spells in his hand and in his deck and how they interact with Ogremancer from this point of the game onward, right? That's always a concern when you're playing a class that's very spell heavy, and I think, you know, Demon Hunter qualifies among that.
This is good though. He can just sit on it, because I think Thijs, yeah, just triple check here, yeah, isn't running any weapon removal. There's no ooze in this list, so those charges are safe for whenever Viper wants to play them.
Can go Fury. He can go Fury, Bladed Lady, clean up the Ogremancer, drop Kazakus, right?
Yeah, uses 2 swings on the Bladed Lady hit though, right? I was thinking of whether he goes like Kazakus tries to get the 1/1 poison deal damage.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can just like hero power swing into the 3/4 and then guarantee the poison.
Fair.
Just because
it's
you
can also just hit the Ogremancer and play the Bladed Lady for 6.
That's true. You know what you learn in here, our lovely viewers? There are options this turn.
Yeah.
But I think the thing for me is I like holding on to Fury, because it's just so cheap for tons of face damage.
Impatient.
Okay, looks like he is going to go for Sottle's first suggestion. 1 point to you.
It looks like the line to me.
And he's going to bank the 7, yeah.
Yes, this is interesting, right? Because he chose to hero power, which meant that he couldn't play Kazakus, but that did leave him in a more favorable position on the trades. It meant that he could just smack 7 straight into the Ogremancer and then also put 7 face and also reserve a charge on the weapon, which is not necessarily the case if he plays the Kazakus. But of course, the downside is that he now doesn't have a particularly powerful turn next turn because he did not play the Kazakus that turn.
Yeah, and tough choices once again, isn't it? Like, does he go for 5 anyway? Or is he just going to go for 1, do what he can, and just hope to just Inquisitor next turn? tough because he might be dead.
That's a 1. He has taken a 1. Yeah, poison deal 3.
Do you agree that he can't swing this turn?
Yes.
If he does, won't be able to activate the Inquisitor's special ability, of course. Oh!
Interesting. I guess, did he just count? So if he doesn't swing this turn, then there is, what, 3, 6, 9, 14, 17 going back the other way. Does he threaten lethal? 3, 6, 7. He would threaten lethal, but Thijs would only have to trade once. Then he goes bash, bash, bash. Yeah, he would lose the 2-turn race at that point if he just didn't trade, so he does have to trade in that spot. However, I do still think that pretty much resigns him to defeat in this position, but it's allows at least for some miracle to get him out of this, like maybe skull off the top or something ridiculous happens. But I think if he chose to hold on to the weapon, I think he was guaranteed to lose.
Yeah, I think very simply now he just has to play an Inquisitor. It does have Rush, as a reminder we mentioned earlier, so he can just trade away loads of this damage. It's not a spell, so it's not going to proc Ogremancer, but slowly now Thijs is just edging away there. The Soul Fragments start procking. 22 with a Drained Soul in hand and a Strongman. Seems pretty good for me. He can start with Scorpid to just drain soul away this Inquisitor and be very happy about where he is in this game, I think.
Agreed, yeah. It's such a weird card to exist, Inquisitor, because obviously over the last few years, the design team have kind of been on a campaign against charge. They don't really like charge as a mechanic. And then they print this thing, which has, like, Omega Charge, right? Because, like, how do you normally play around charge? Play a Taunt minion. Well, that's that literally just doesn't work against this card. They just rush into it and then hit face anyway in the same turn.
Yeah, and I guess this strange thing about it, I suppose, is that you know exactly when it's coming, right?
Yes. That skull.
I'm just going to poke the 3/3, I guess?
Yeah?
I mean, there's still tons of damage in this deck. There's still 2 Relentless Pursuits in there, another Warglaives, another Bladed Lady. It's not like this deck is reliant on the Inquisitor. It's just a very, very powerful part of the deck.
Yeah, the problem is the Inquisitors... I feel like the Inquisitors needed to interact with the Strongmen this game if you were ever going to win on that plan, right? Like, if you were going to win with just face damage and finish off with Inquisitors, great. But since that isn't working anymore, I think your Inquisitors had to rush into these Strongmen to be able to get yourself out of the game, because now you're going to need, like, Relentless Pursuits to be able to deal with these, and even then that deals with one of them, and there's still just another one on the board. Warblades? Okay.
I think you would have needed the Warglaives of Azimuth plus Relentless Pursuit, right, to feel very good about what was going to happen.
Sure.
But still, not a bad turn, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
Gets to heal for a smooth 9.
A smooth 9.
Yeah, but now this Thijs can just go, Yashiraj, go again.
Yep.
And now it's, again, what's really funny with Yashiraj is there's so much focus on the value, and I feel not enough focus on the it's a 10-10. Like, because now Viper just loses this race by a million miles. And he's still like, no, that's not enough, right?
There's another Relentless Pursuit in the
Neophyte
deck, right?
Skull, Warglaives, Relentless Pursuit. Does that do... It still doesn't do enough, does it? With Yashiraj protected by 3 taunts, I don't think Viper can get through everything and survive.
Yeah, just looking at the remaining deck list there, and it's not really seeing a way through this.
Demons? Demons.
Muzzle their magic.
He's going to go for the Skull Battle.
Yeah, it's just a 10-10, as you say, though. Like, he could potentially do enough to deal with these 6/6s and get the heal with the Relentless Pursuit, but without access to a clear for the 10-10, I don't think he's going to be able to take enough damage off the board.
Yeah, that is going to be the concede. Viper just drawing what he can there to see what was going to happen, but Thijs going up 2-0. And, you know, I thought, although Viper had a bit of a rough mid-game with a lack of options, I did think the Ildari Inquisitors could get there, but I think Thijs did a good job of just putting awkward threats on board and just basically keeping them there, maybe down to Viper not having that mid-game.
Yeah, and I think, you know, because he was shut down primarily by the Ogremasters and the strong mid-game that Thijs had, you know, drawing the Illadaris early did not work out that well for him. Like you said, it is, of course, more powerful to just rip a skull on 6 and then discount some of those real power cards, but I initially felt it wouldn't be that bad having both the green rags in his close to in his opener, but he just wasn't really able to execute because he fell so far behind on the mid-game. And this was the play, right? The Sociologist on 7 was what really forced him to just be so far behind on board.
Yep, just needed that Deck of Lunacy, Cycle of Hatred to kick in to be able to clear that board up, but obviously not quite going to happen in this list. But yeah, the Militia was just the key. And you saw it straight away. As soon as Thijs hovered the coin, Viper just, like, you know, had the look up in the air of like, oh no, because that was probably the one play he just really didn't want Thijs to make, and then he knew there were enough soul fragments in the deck, and then Militia kind of took over from there, and that means we're all the way down to Thijs' Rogue in this game number 3, and Thijs could just continue to impress and maybe sweep Viper 3-0 in this rematch, I guess, of the finals last week.
Yeah, it's almost getting to the point where it's story time, Raven, because, you know, if Thijs is able to pick up back-to-back wins, we have to start telling some stories about the old ESL King of the Hill days, don't we? And how there was a certain legacy, but we will leave the details of that if it comes to pass. But yeah, it's just the Rogue now waiting to be won with for Thijs, and it's a more standard list, I would say. I know some people do have strong opinions about Tenwu and Alexstrasza being in the deck or not being in the deck, but it is a very common build of the deck these days. I think the one perhaps outlandish thing in here, based on where we are on the 17th of April, is that Thijs still has 2 Penflingers in his list, which is something that a lot of people have decided to cut out. The theory was initially, though, and I think most people agreed with this, was that it would still be good in Rogue just because of the insane field contact synergy that it has. But I think over time, people have realized that that isn't necessarily the case, and they've been cutting it down, replacing it with Goblin Orc Mergence, that kind of thing, to be going through. But again, Europe, what are you laughing at?
You always say Goblin when it's Guardian, but okay.
Is it Guardian? Is Goblin one of them? Is Goblin a different card?
Goblin might be the Rush one. Goblin might, because it is a Goblin, the Rush one, but yeah, it's Guardian Orc Merchant. Don't confuse a Goblin and a Gnome. Come on.
I mean, how could I do that? It's so horribly insensitive and offensive of me. I apologize outright. But yeah, I think people have adapted the list. But again, just to make the point, you know, this was a very much snap decision from Europe players, especially those who, you know, have a real life and obligations and like a stream schedule like Thijs has.
I've heard Thijs has one of those.
Yeah, that couldn't just like stay up all night like a degenerate before deck submissions and actually had to go to bed at a reasonable time, which I imagine Thijs did. So not going to fault him too much for some old-fashioned deck-building decisions.
I actually think 1 is still fine, in my book at least. I just think for me it's the double is maybe a tad too much. He's going to be going up against Viper's Demon Hunter, though, once again. And this, you know, is a much, much nicer opening here for Viper. This is the sort of thing you want. Good early-game minions along with some card draw / generation. So Viper, off to a good start this time.
My kingdom for a backstab, Raven.
Yeah, someone played Backstab against me on ladder today, and I was like, what? Like, that's a card? People play that in this year? I was well annoyed. I was like, why don't people play more of this? This card's good.
I see you're a man of culture as well. Yes, I like this Backstab in your deck. It is just so bizarre, right? Like, how many years of Rogue we've had? Is this now, like, the first time we've been seeing Rogue not play Backstab? It's just such an insane card.
Even though you always just want to play the 2/3 for the free hero power quickly, I do think Chaos Strike just feels correct here. Keep the Battle Fiend safe, and then of course just open up more card draw going forward. So not too bad a response here from Viper. And now Thijs is going to just drop the Octobot. Is this a relentless pursuit? Wow, Viper doesn't think twice.
I would also not think.
I like it, yeah.
If there's one thing you're learning about my style against Rogue, is I have an immense amount of respect for Octobot.
Yeah, I like it. I was just a little bit surprised at how quickly the decision was just made from Viper.
Like honestly, if someone like has opening hand Octobot and for some reason I have an ability to deal 4 damage to it in my hand, oh my god, like it's my favorite Hearthstone game of the day. Like that just never happens. I would immediately do that as well.
Here, though, looks like the Dread-Eye turn here. Viper can just get that free hero power and start chipping some damage. Because, again, even this tiny bit of extra chip damage will add up. Because, you know, Rogue isn't healing a ton. Rogue isn't normally playing a ton of taunts either. So once Viper gets him low, he's just very dead to Inquisitor.
He's also rolling into Warglaives, into Skull. Like, this has pretty much been the dream curve for his deck.
Another 2-3 to play here, but I think cleaning this up and just spending that 5 mana is well worth it here for Viper.
Agreed.
I would argue it's even less about getting the weapon pre-equipped, but just spending 5 mana on 1 card as Demon Hunter is very, very important. Just get it out the way, get it cast.
Yeah, I think Viper immediately queued up the second charge to face, but then stopped and thought about it, and I'm liking that he's stopping and thinking about this, because it does have implications, right? He's about to rip Skull next turn, so he doesn't really have any mana to use on anything else if he needs to clear up important minions next turn. But also that Skull could hit him in Illidari, right? Which potentially he's going to want to have weapon equipped.
I also think as well, with an expected 5 mana Golem, the Skull could hit Fury, Relentless Pursuit, and he could get double clears on it, right? And clean them up very nicely and then just continue on with his day. So yeah, I think for multiple reasons, this hold is very nice.
Yeah, that's an excellent point.
Like Relentless now, unlucky Golems. You're dead and you didn't even heal.
Yes, Relentless would be absolutely absurd here if he can get hold of it for 0. He does just, of course, now have Chaos Strike if he wants to just clean up naturally and not take the gamble with the Skull to give him a way out of this.
And I guess you can argue that with each Golem healing 5, it only actually heals 8 total to Thijs, and Viper hasn't committed anything, right? He hasn't already used an Illidari to push damage, so even these healing, it's not the end of the world right now. It's still early enough in the game. Oh, even better.
The juice.
I think he definitely uses one, right? Like, when's the next time this is going to be this cheap? It's still value trades, and it means he can either hold the weapon or put another swing to phase. Double jumps to use all his mana to get another Skull, but again, Viper won't be too concerned with that Skull potentially getting locked, because he can very easily unlock it from the left.
Yep. Now options of just face damage yourself versus protecting the 6/6, and he goes for the 6/6 in play line. Really interesting here, because suddenly he's just staring at like wicked stabs being very threatening, coming back the other way from Thijs' side now.
A little bit scary. I will say he hasn't seen an Octo reduction, of course, because he dealt with it very nicely earlier on. And there's a long way off Alex Straza being a problem, so it really is just those wicked stabs and like a few dagger swings or a minion hit, right?
Yep. So the Jandis is getting stepped here.
Pretty weak, honestly. The Thijs there, not really the scariest board for Viper to look at.
Nope.
Tell you what, as well, I have been impressed by these Felfire Deadeyes. They look good on paper, but I don't think until you play them or see them, you don't realize how often this hero power actually starts to stack up.
Mm-hmm.
But again, weird enough to say, like, Viper doesn't have to Skull this turn. He has other good options, which to me feels like madness.
Wait, Raven's suggesting not Skull?
I know. That's what I'm saying. It's that crazy.
What bizarre alien race is currently holding Raven and replacing him with a pod person?
grows short.
The Skull would open up Viper to more information as to whether he can even potentially like try and set up 2-turn against Thijs.
Yeah.
But it does look like Viper's just saying, you know what, I have a very good turn, and then I have Skull plus loads of hovering space and mana for next turn.
That's fair. He just ships it. Okay.
And he gets to heal a bit, right?
Mm-hmm.
He is dead to double Wicked Stab, though.
I think that's a reasonable risk to take, though.
Mm. Yeah, because the second it's not, Thijs has to trade. And then you've won even more. Or at least you're winning even more.
It does give Thijs full control of his 1 health minion, his illusion minion, right? Which is a big advantage to have. Ooh! Oh, he has Penflinger! He has Penflinger in hand, Raven!
Yep. I remember not too long ago,
goodness.
Sottle. I was very excited about this type of play, and you all laughed at me.
Hey, how much damage is that even?
With the Rhino as well?
Is it lethal? 7-6 goes face, and then the Rhino can overkill?
No, because everything is only doing... Wait.
It's lethal. It's lethal. It's 13 from the 2 minions. The Rhino overkills for 5 on the Wandmaker. It's lethal.
Oh yeah, it is.
Thijs didn't spot it until then either.
I thought he was like one
so
off.
Unlikely. It seems so unlikely, but I just eyeballed it. I was like, that's lethal, isn't it?
Honestly, I was way too focused and kind of auto-assumed there was 3 health minions there, but like all of them were. But congratulations to Thijs. He kind of, I am going to say, stole that last game because I think he was in a lot of trouble there, and I think Viper set up the turn. I think Viper made the correct decision just going face and saying, well, the second there isn't double stab, then you lose. Maybe one trade could have happened into the 5-3 with one of his minions, especially with a Skull, but in general, I like the way Viper did that. I think he was in very much control of that matchup, but you know, when Jandis gets involved, sometimes she just gets involved.
Yeah. We saw a below-average Jandis into a nutty Jandis on the second roll, but that's just kind of the power level the card's at. I think I said this like when we were testing on Thursday, like I was playing 6-mana Jandis and it just didn't feel strange. You know, like when a card gets nerfed and you start playing it afterwards, it just feels weird and feels wrong. Like Jandis just still felt like a fine card at 6 mana. I was happy to play it. I was happy to have it in my hand. I would like coin it out on turn